Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Pattison Ave Phanatics Show. I'm your host, James Scorza, filling in for TK once again this week. With me, as always, is the group of companions on this Saturday morning of Philly sports, basically the best of Philly sports week all together. Mr. Joey Marks, what's going on, dude?
Good morning, Philadelphia.
Damon Salim?
Good morning, James. Good morning, Joe. Happy Saturday, people.
Happy
Yep,
Saturday.
it is definitely a happy Saturday. We got a lot to get to on this day. Flyers did some changes on
Yeah.
the last couple 24 hours. Sixers got a big win last night over the Portland Trailblazers. Philly spring training is basically they're knocking the ball out of the park, man. If anybody's not watching that, you're missing a lot of good baseball. And the Eagles free agency is before we know it. So, Joey, where do we begin on this Saturday morning?
Well, James, we have to start with the team that is making big waves in Philadelphia right now. Your Philadelphia Flyers.
Yes, sir.
The orange and black. Hooray, Chuck is gone. Ding dong, the bitch is gone. Thank you. Thank
Hold on,
you.
Mike.
Thank you. I am so ecstatic that we didn't have to wait to the end of the season for Chuck Fletcher to get his walking papers. Oh, shock. Chuck Fletcher got fired. Oh, shock. He's going to get no job anywhere. So I want to start with reactions. James, what was your reaction to Chuck Fletcher's firing?
I mean, I gotta say it's like long overdue. I mean, to say to be honest, because I've been preaching to this choir for like all summer long, going back to when we didn't get Johnny Gaudreau actually. But yeah, I think it was only a matter of time. I mean, like we didn't do nothing in the trade deadline was basically the one thing that really bothered me, and just like we're standing on our knees, just waiting for something to happen, and unfortunately, it never came to fruition. But yeah, I got to be honest. I think this is probably a big step in the Flyers' positive direction to make them go further than what they were previously with Chuck Fletcher. But the question is, though, is not the positivity about this team. It's about who's going to come in and turn this team around. Ever since Chuck Fletcher not being there, like who's going to be Dave Scott's guy? And unfortunately, I mean, I got a couple people on my. I try to do my
You got
research
your short
about.
list?
I got my research to see who would be a great candidate for this Flyers club, but I mean, I can say that until I'm blue in the face. That's all up to Dave Scott, but it's a big step in a positive direction for the Flyers, no question about it.
Dame, I'm going to touch on it with you. What was your reaction? I mean, that was definitely a headline.
Yeah. So yesterday, as I normally do, I hit my app or my crossing bar, but it just came across the phone that he was fired. It was like somewhere between 8:39, 9:30 instead of that ballpark. It was early, and of course, you know, you turn on sports talk radio to try to get a reaction. You know, I go back to Joe, his press conference after the no trade deadline, if you will, when he didn't really make any major moves. And he said, I don't know whatever happens, but my intentions is to da-da-da-da-da. And I was and as James was talking, a couple thoughts came to mind. One, never like to see a person lose their job, but to the detriment of the team, they were going nowhere fast. The other thing that I thought was interesting was that when they had the town hall, a lot of people booed him. And then someone mentioned it yesterday on one of the sports talk shows how the nail in the coffin, James, was the Rangers game.
Yeah.
And how the crowd took over the barn, if you will. And I thought about it. And I was like, yeah, one thing about the 4 for 4, the Flyers fans, man, have always been loyal to a fault. I think that for me as a fan, and as a person who does sports podcasts now, you know how I often go, Joe, when I look at a player, I give a player 5 years as far as establishing themselves, right?
Yeah.
From they be at their rookie year. I said by the 5th year, you can kind of get a gauge of who they are and what they are and what they're going to be, pretty much. Some show faster than others. Some are late bloomers, right? But it's about a 5-year window, and I think when I look back at Fletcher, I think he really did 7, 8 years, something like that. James, 6, 7 years.
Something like that. I think it's
Yeah, and it's
around.
like I think they made the playoffs once, maybe at all, if at all. I can't quite remember, but it was going on too long, and it was going in the wrong direction.
Yeah,
It's one thing if it's going in the right direction, but it was going nowhere fast. So they had to make the move on a number of levels.
Under Chuck Fletcher's regime, the Flyers only made the playoffs once.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
and
they barely. That was the one they barely got into. I remember.
Yeah,
It was some help along the way. Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, here's something to think about. I'm with you that you never want to see a guy lose his job because, especially like how hard some people work, sometimes it just doesn't work out. But with Chuck, I think there's a difference. When I always view it like there's a difference between a person that just doesn't have the chips fall their way and a person who just doesn't pick up a phone and do the work. And when you don't do your job, you shouldn't be here. Like that,
Right.
That is just the fact that about it. To go and touch on the Rangers game, I think that was very calculated by Flyers fans. I think that was a message to Dave Scott, like, if you don't make a change, you will see that more often. Because the Rangers are our rivals. The Rangers are one of our biggest rivals.
Many years.
Right. And the Flyers fans knew, okay, if they take over the house, Dave Scott's going to have no other choice but to say, yo, what is this? And
it has to wake them up at some point, right?
Right. Now, there's a couple things to kind of unpack here. A couple things I heard on Sports Talk and a couple things that I kind of gathered from it. With Dave Scott, he has confidants. He has people in the office that are giving him the day-to-day, what's going on with the day-to-day in the Flyers organization. One of them is a former Flyers player in Bill Barber. Now, Bill Barber is the one who signed off on Chuck Fletcher's hiring. So my feeling is, especially in the Dave Scott statement that he made yesterday, is that he said that this was going to be a multi-year rebuild, and he used that word rebuild, not retool, not rebuild, to get this franchise back to the Stanley Cup. He has that mentality, that statement. I need to see the proof in that. Now, look, it's hard to make a proof when you just fired the guy you basically had your advisors tell you to hire. So you got to clean house. You got to trust. You got to put trust in better people than Bill Barber. The other thing is, and I'm going to get your take, James, because you said you kind of have a short list, so you're going to do a research, and I'm sure you'll have that for in future shows. But Danny Briere, takes over as interim general manager. Now, Danny Briere has been saddled with, let's just call it what it is, a shit show.
Right.
And to be fair, you know, for Danny, he can't really he's really handcuffed to what he can do because there's no trade deadline.
Right.
He's got to kind of start thinking about what he's going to start doing in the offseason. What moves can he start to line up? There were some names that I heard because there have been other firings and there needs to be other hirings for president of operations and lead scout and everything. I heard Danny is reaching out to some ex-teammates to bring in, even if it's in an interim basis. One such name was Simone Gagne. Another such name was Matthew Barnaby. Both were close friends with Danny and are close friends with Danny. And I feel like Danny is just trying to surround himself with guys who he trusts their opinions. So the question I want to raise to you guys, what kind of rope, if you're Dave Scott, do you give Danny Briere? Of course you're going to interview other GMs, but what kind of rope do you give Danny Briere? James?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a tall task if you ask me about what Danny Briere is going to get into because a lot of what Chuck Fletcher did is basically hard to rebuild with and try to turn this team into a to what they are. But I think the one thing I would do with Danny Briere is that, I mean, I just hope that whatever the case is that it's not like we're bringing in ex Flyers like we did with coaches back in the day. Because I really, if that's the case, I'm out. I'm sorry, I just am. And the reason why I think that we should look for an outsider if Danny Briere does not get the job after not get the job title after the year is all over. But I think the one thing that the Flyers really need to do is just to see what Danny Briere can bring, and then also look for other GMs could fill the void to try to get this team into what they really need to be, and that's what Dave Scott yesterday into a Stanley Cup contender, and it starts at the top too.
So, do you have anybody like that jumps out to you that if they were available tomorrow, you'd be like, "Here's a contract, sign it, be our new general manager"?
Yeah, I think the one thing I took out of it too, I did basically a pre-article yesterday. It's still
Yeah.
trying to basically I'm trying to toot and whistle to see like who else should be a good fit. But I always liked like I mentioned it last week with you, Joey. Always liked Kevin Shelladale of Winnipeg. I mean, he just brings. I mean, I know we're bringing up minor league hockey, but the team that he brought up to the club is actually kind of similar to what the Flyers need. Is because he brought down a broken down. I mean, the Chicago Wolves were not even relevant yet. But from '97 to 2009, he actually turned the team into a real dynasty. I mean, he won four championships, two with the Turner Cup in the IHL, and two with Calder Cups in the AHL. And it's just like this is the right guy for the job. I mean, look, he's doing a fantastic job with Winnipeg. I
Yeah.
mean, he's doing a. I mean, I'm not sure if he wants to bring his own coaches in. I think but I'm not entirely sure about that. But hey, I mean, if the floor is there for Sheldon Dayoff to come in, I'd be like, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I think it'll be a good fit here.
And I'll tell everybody out there who's listening, man, if you want to tune in with this show and listen to great Flyers analyzing, James Gorge is the man
Yeah,
because a couple
definitely.
years ago he called his shot and it came true. I mean,
Yeah.
he is the Adam Schefter of NHL on this network.
You know, it's funny.
Basically, he said Rustalainen was coming to the Flyers. Sure enough, that's where he came.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the other thing too. I want to talk about Rasmus Ristolainen for just one sec. Um, like if Sheldon Dayoff comes in here, he'll be like the next. He'll be reminding me of what he had with Nathan Oystrick too. I mean, he had a big power hitter. Like Ristolainen was like Oystrick was like that too, kind of like Ristolainen, and so like a little bit of a kind of like a semi like similarities like that he would bring to the table here, like what he did with the Chicago Wolves during his tenure with them.
And Winnipeg made the playoffs a year
Yeah,
or
he
two
was.
ago too.
Yeah, he was
So
actually. I'm sorry, Joe.
that's got to say something.
He got him to the
Winnipeg
conference
hasn't
final.
been relevant. Yeah.
They got. Yeah, they were. He was actually a candidate for a GM of the year in 2018. So that's like 5 years ago. And mind you, here's another joy bomb. His birthday is the same day the Eagles won the Super Bowl. So the more you know.
Well, listen, we all hope the best for what comes next with the Flyers. I honestly think that it's going to be a matter of cleaning house. And I
Definitely.
mean that from the standpoint of however you have to get rid of contracts. I agree with you, James, in the sense that the way this team looks forward is by looking younger. Because the way that this team, when this team was going to playoff after playoff after playoff after playoff,
Right.
was when the Phantoms were winning Calder Cups.
Yep.
When we had a system down there that was so sustainable that we didn't have to go trading. We didn't have to work. I mean, we let guys walk out the door that me and you have had debates why did they let him walk out the door? Well, probably
Right.
because they had someone coming right up behind them in the
Right.
minors. So why keep a guy and pay them that amount of money?
And I remember.
Dame, go
No,
ahead,
I'm
Dame.
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Dame, I mean, where do you see, or what is your confidence level when it comes down to this team, and do you support this multi-year rebuild?
Yeah, a couple of things to piggyback off of what you said. As far as I remember that with when the Phantoms were successful, that was like the early 2000s, and so
Yeah.
the Flyers were, in the playoffs. And like you said, Joe, they could let guys walk into James' point because they could bring somebody. I remember them bringing guys up, sending them back down to Phantoms, whatever the case may be. It's funny. I when you look at the Flyers and you want them to be relevant, I want to get me a Flyers shirt. And springtime. There's always get the Flyers hat or the shirt. But
Yes, sir.
I think that they should go younger. I think that when you mention Bill Barber, those guys got to go. It's
Definitely.
like the train ride is over. You play for the organizations. You've been in management for 1,000. You've been in management more years than you played for the organizations. Okay, so it's time to change. Now you can always be around. You could be a consultant. We have no issues with that. But as far as helping out with day-to-day decisions, deciding on pick Fletcher. Nah, those days are over because in life we need change. You need to replenish. You need something new, something fresh. And then once you do that, you come in, admit it to yourselves and to the fans, yes, we're going to rebuild. And we're going to do it the right way. That means getting rid of some contracts. We may have it. I think when people hear the word rebuild and/or process, they of course they go to what the Sixers did, but that was a extenuating circumstance on many levels, and I know we'll get to them. But what people have to remember is you took Joe when you knew he's going to be out for the first year, but then he had a setback. It wasn't planned on it for being for 2 years or longer in regards to him. So that kind of set things back. But I think in hockey, and James could speak to this, it's not as long. I think you can at least become a playoff team within 2 to 3 years tops, Joe.
Yeah.
I think if you draft well, you make a trade here because you have the goalie, right? You build your lines. Just build your freaking lines.
Absolutely.
That's it. You have 2 scores and a defender on each line, or however you figure it out. Build your lines and you build them. And okay, you want a goon or two, fine. You may need that in hockey, but not the 70s goon, not the 80s goon. You need a guy that can go out there and play. So you build it right, and you could be back in the mix within a couple of years.
I see. So to touch on that, and I'll let James comment, but to touch on that a little, like I agree in the sense that one of the biggest moves I think the Flyers have to make going forward is just gaining draft assets. Whether it's trading like some of these guys that like Atkinson or whatever, and whatever you get, because in hockey, I know people say, well, after the first 3 or 4 guys, it's a big drop off. However, what you have to kind of understand is that you don't need a stud at every single position. You need viable prospects that you can then say, okay, when put the right coach, the right training staff, and the right system in, this implementation can make that guy who was just, somebody that was a 6th round pick into a pretty serviceable starter. This is, I kind of always go back to the way that the Flyers kind of drafted before. Guys that they would have 10 or 12 draft picks in a year. And would they bring up all those picks? No. Some of those guys would stay in the minors for years. Some of those guys were lifers in the minors. But that didn't matter, because in that perspective, you're like, well, how much is that really costing us? Nothing. Right. It's not costing you anything to develop prospects. And right now, you're telling the fans this is a multi-year rebuild. Okay, even if you gave me 2 seasons, I'm going to be able to possibly and just get as draft assets. I'm going to be able to find maybe 3 or 4 or 5 stars. Okay, are they going to be Connor McDavid? No, that doesn't matter. I need to have guys that I can build around, like
And
a
so
nucleus.
and so Joe, and when you do that, when you tell the fans, your fan base, we're doing a rebuild, but in addition to that, it's up to you to find that player for us to watch.
Mhm.
I.e., we were able to watch Joe in what we thought
Mhm.
Ben would be at the time. You gave us something to look at. You gave us something to look at when Andy came with McNabb, right? You got to give us something to look at while you're rebuilding.
Well,
To your point, as far as drafting, I 110% agree with you, because that sport, you can develop those players,
yeah.
and set your lines so that you can have that team that you went out there for the future.
Absolutely.
And I'll keep in mind with this too, Dame, when we talk about parallels to the Sixers, yeah, we needed Joe, but I go a year or two prior to Joe even being drafted. We had Evan Turner. We had guys that we
Yeah.
couldn't watch. We had
Yeah.
guys that we put pride in but didn't do anything. Michael Carter Williams. We had guys that we thought were the guys that we wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And
We
they
went along.
weren't.
They weren't. No, we went along.
They weren't.
Yeah.
And now they're just struggling to exist.
Or even when when the Sixers, they were bad before they got AI, but AI gets hit. You give us something to watch.
Right.
Gave us something to watch, and then boom, yeah.
So I'm not saying that the Flyers are and that team, Dave Scott, are going to have someone like a Joel Embiid, like that guy to watch by next year.
And I'm not saying either.
If that happens, great. But I
Right.
just wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, I agree. Before we go any further,
but it's more so, even if you got, I'm sorry, James, even if you got somebody, a cohesive, something to go, okay, I can see what I'm more trying to say, something you could build off of. That's what I'm trying to say. Something to someone you could build off of.
Absolutely. Today's show is proudly presented by David Archeri, Esquire. Workers' compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal law, criminal law. Give them a call at 610-565-0300. That's David Archeri, Esquire, www.cherryinjurylaw.com. And tell them that the boys over at Pattison Avenue and EOP sent you.
Joe, was the job that Chuck Fletcher did, was that criminal?
Yeah.
I was waiting for a segment to be that.
Not even close. Not even. Look, he owes.
He needs Jackie Charles to come in and
listen. There are certain thieves in pro sports. There are certain thieves, con artist thieves. Jay Cutler's one of them. Carson Wentz is another one. Chuck Fletcher's another one. Andrew Bynum's another one.
Yeah.
Listen, these are all guys.
Doug Moe. I don't know if you guys remember, Doug Moe was one.
Yeah. All these guys just stole money. You want to talk about
flat out in front of our faces, Joe. Here, I'm taking it from you, Philly. Ha ha.
Right. And it's like, here, I don't know what Chuck Fletcher was making, but dude, I know that people watch for how high the Powerball and Mega Millions is going up to, but Chuck Fletcher hit the goddamn Powerball by getting a cush job like that and doing that bad of a job. Oh, I got paid. Okay, cool. I mean, understand something. He got fired, but he still got his money, and he got his money for what? I'm just, look, you could be unconscious and hit and throw a dart at a dartboard with a limp hand and do better moves than Chuck Fletcher. Yeah. That's where I was at. Now let's go to a team that is starting to open eyes nationally. The Philadelphia 76ers. Guys, I mean, I'm really starting. I don't know how I feel. You guys are gonna have to talk to me. All these national pundits are jumping on the bandwagon, and it's kind of irritating me because it's like, no, you're not allowed. No, the wagon is left.
No,
you're not allowed to be on the train. The train has left the station, and everyone that believes in the Sixers has been on the train and is taking cocktails. So This team is 5-1 the last 6 games, 4-1 in
Pretty
the
amazing.
last home stand, 19-12 in the home record for this season. This team has 16 games left, 10 on the road. Guys, I need you to talk to me because what's your takeaway with because there's going to be a lot more national games, nationally televised games. Dame, I'll start with you. What is with the national media jumping on the bandwagon?
Yeah, and some are still kind of not there, but I've heard, to your point, because it's in the now, right? It's in the now, and I think also you can no longer deny what this team is becoming before your eyes. Let's go back to last Saturday, the Milwaukee game. I was unable to do the show. My son had to take his driver's test. He passed, by the way. Shout out, my man.
Congratulations.
Passed his driver's test. Thank you. Yeah. But so I said they were going to win the game. I thought they were going to blow them out. But how they came back, scoring 48 points in the fourth quarter, and then going on to run up and down the court with the Pacers, right? In that high-scoring game. And then the very next night, locking in on defense against the Wolves, keeping them under 100 points. Last night, you come off the road, you could tell legs are dragging. Joe, if this will help you, what I saw last night, and we'll get to the shot in the whole shebang. We'll even have to talk about Doc Rivers sticking to his word about saying some guys may not play. He set 2 of his starters down in the crucial part of last night's game. 2 of his, not just starters, but main contributors, and who I love, Tobias, and who I like, PJ Tucker. And I got it, and I think they got it as well. What we're seeing is the toughness that this team is freaking tough. And I mean, like, I'm ready to rumble you. Now, they got a big fight coming up in a couple of weeks against the Celtics, right? Forget the Celtics won the series, but the Sixers have to win that game. And what I'm seeing before my eyes is that their leader is taking them on his back and defying what everyone's saying he can't do. He's not a closer, really. He closed out in Toronto last year. He closed out and won a game early this year, and he closed out last night. He's making smart decisions. I heard somebody say on another show, and I don't want to go into it this morning, that he's just a scorer and not a good defender, not a good rebounder. And he only averaged 7 boards a game this month. Oh, excuse me. You must have forgotten when he came back from the All-Star game and had 14 boards. Or you must have forgotten in the Timberwolves game when he had 7 boards but did not play in the fourth quarter because he didn't have to. Okay, stop with the selective, as Chris Rock has selective outrage. Stop with the selective memory of what this guy is. You're not watching. He had 4 blocks last night. What do you mean he's not a defender? Stop. That cringes me. So
I completely agree. I completely.
If you say it, Dame, I believe it, man.
I'm sorry, I did that cringes me because if you don't like him, fine. If you don't like what Doc, but don't come with the nonsense, man. And so that's but right now, to sum it up, Joe, for me, this team is evolving at the right time before our eyes, and they're tough. I'm describing them as a tough team.
It's pretty special when you think about it.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on the PJ Tucker thing in a couple of minutes. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up, so there's 2 national analysts that, were kind of wavering, and one was Doris Burke and one was Grant Hill. And then all of a sudden I'm listening to both of them, and you would think they had the red and blue pom-poms out for the Sixers. And I'm thinking, hold on. Wasn't I the one sitting on this couch a couple months ago listening to y'all just berate that this team may not even get past the second round? Now they're an NBA final, contenders. Like, what? No, you cannot jump on this bandwagon, and you cannot jump on, and now everyone, how long have I been hand-wringing this MVP thing for Joel Embiid? The last 2 seasons?
I know you
how long? Because
Two and a
Hopefully it
half.
comes to
remember,
fruition this time, Joe. I
Yeah.
gotta see it though. You know,
I mean, I'm like, okay,
we see
so,
it. I mean, it's not like we don't see it.
No, I'm not blaming y'all. No,
No, I'm not
but
saying we are either. I'm just
right. But so there was an interview after the I want to say it was a Timberwolves game. It might have not been, but it was a nationally televised game, and he basically was interviewed, and he said he was asked. He said, "Listen, without bias, do you think you deserve to be MVP?"
Mhm.
And he gave the best political answer he could have given. Because he could have outright said yes. But he said it in such a way and he articulated it in such a way where I'm like, he's still saying I'm the man.
Mhm.
I'm just not saying I'm the man.
Mhm.
He basically said, listen, I just need to continue to elevate my game so my team can win, so that I can do the best. I need to dominate. The word dominate came out of his mouth 5 times in a 5-minute interview. This is maybe even less than a 5-minute interview, but it came out 5 times. This guy knows that he's capable of dominating whatever he wants to. He knows that he is capable of being the stud that he knows for him to be. He doesn't need the national media to give him the rah-rah, because in his mind he's like, good, don't respect me. He's like, where have y'all been at? Like asking me these questions after a game. Do I think I should be MVP? I thought I should have been MVP 2 years ago. I'm over it. That's like a bad ex-girlfriend. He's like, that's like having herpes and being over that. Like, listen, y'all just trying to catch up with the time. I'm over that. I want a championship. I don't care about that. Let that Joker in Denver have the participation trophy. I'll take the real one. I'll take the real hardware. Like that's where I think Embiid is. And that's where I just go, okay, he's on another level. He's transcended his own mind for where he wants to take his play to. And Dame, you hit the nail on the head. People that say he's only a one-dimensional guy, you're not watching the goddamn games.
No.
That's the best way I can tell you. Now look, Dame, we had Mike Laurel on last week, and I had Mike take the floor, and I said, listen, Mike, you've made some comments about Joel Embiid, and I need you to just clarify, because I don't want to keep talking to you as though I'm misconstruing your opinion. Now, his take was he doesn't feel like this team can win, and Embiid is included with this team. I don't think he doesn't think that Embiid's a bad player, but similar to me, how I think that we're still trying to find the right combination of players to put around a guy like Joel Embiid. I mean, think about it. Golden State got very, very fortunate. They have Stephen Curry, and they figured out the right combination that fits around him. That's why they have championships. They find the right combination. LeBron is always trying. He doesn't always succeed, but he tries. So I think we're just what I think Mike was saying is, if we can't find the right combination for Joel Embiid, we should move on from Joel Embiid. Give him a chance to be as good of a player as he can be on a team that can give him that combination. I think you look at the bastardized person in Sean Marks up in Brooklyn from my family, who's no longer invited to any family reunions. And look what he did to dismantle that team. Right. Now he's going to have to answer the fans and say, well, there's no other star that you have here. You gave it all away. You gave the farm away. Again, you gave the farm away when you had Garnett, Pierce, and Antonio Walker. Now you are, not Antonio, Ray Allen. Now you're giving the farm away again with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and now Ben Simmons is coming off the bench.
Wow.
What the hell, man? So that's one of the reasons why he's been exiled from the Marks clan. Because we are not, he is not associated with the last name
Right.
Mark. No, he might as well be
Question about it.
Sean Blank. That's as far as I'm concerned.
Show blanks.
I want to get into something that that Dame touched on. PJ Tucker.
Mhm.
I had said, I think it was you, Dame, who asked, you didn't know much about Jalen McDaniels. Now I know Jaden McDaniels because
His brother.
when I had Vision and I used to play NBA 2K, I really kind of loved scouting. I loved being more the GM than the player. And I love Jaden McDaniels' athleticism and dimensions and just his offensive prowess. Jalen McDaniels was like the more defensive player of the brothers.
Mhm.
However, this last couple games has proven completely the opposite.
Mhm.
This kid's something special.
Mhm.
And I think Doc is seeing that, hence why I think PJ's been relegated to the bench. Now, my question for you guys, and I'll start with James. Do you think that Doc should keep PJ Tucker out of the starting lineup and coming off the bench until the playoffs to keep those old AARP legs fit for the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I could take out of it. The piggyback what you guys said about Joel Embiid, like last night when they took that game-winning shot, I was like saying to myself, if he can make that more often, like that could be key for them going far in the playoffs. I think that's what I took out of it too. And I guess the PJ Tucker thing, I don't know much about his availability. I know he's a great defender, to tell you, but I would rather put in Maxi more to just to instead of like rotating like in and out. Like Maxi's a starter, no question about it. That's bar none. I mean, I think that the one thing what Doc needs to do is keep him in the starting lineup more than anything.
Well, I mean, PJ would get replaced for McDaniels or Paul Reed.
Yeah,
So,
that's also true.
and so for me, Paul's been starving for this moment, and you could tell when certain players want it more.
Mhm.
And not to say that PJ doesn't want it, but you got Jalen and you got Paul Reed that are both young legs.
Mhm.
They got springs, and like that. That's what kind of gives me more pride. Um, Dame, I'm going to go to you with this. And what's your takeaway with PJ? And I'll add to that by asking this: you saw how high scoring the contrast of games between the Pacers game and the Minnesota game. We got PJ because of his defense. Is defense dead in the NBA?
No, I don't think defense is dead in the NBA. I think the people have to recognize one, these guys are high octane athletes, man. They can hit that three shot. I mean, that's why these games are high scoring games. These guys are hitting legitimate 3-point shots, and I've accepted it. It's exciting, but one of the things that I like about the Sixers is that they're just not simply a 3-point shooting team. They're a multi-dimensional team. Going back in regards to PJ, no, I would like to keep him in the starting lineup. The reason being is, and I'm going to comment what the guy said about whether we can win with Joe or not, or whatever the case may be. So when you look at the defense and toughness that he brings to the team, Doc said something last night, and I didn't realize it till afterwards. He moved Joe to the 4, and PJ was the 5. So you get the luxury of playing with that guy and moving him around, and then you could do other things to help your team defensively. And then that was the lineup with Melton, Maxey, and Hart, which leads me to what the guy was saying earlier. So when people make the statement, they don't think we can win with Joe and all this, I'm so glad, and I'm not even a Bulls fan, that the Bulls didn't have that mentality, because it took Jordan 7 freaking years, okay? And it took them to find the combination and to build off of that. Well, folks, I'm sorry to say, but I'm happy to say the combination is here. His name is James Harden. James Harden last night did something. First of all, he leads the league in assists. Joe leads the league in scoring. That's never happened or has, or I can't remember if it has or maybe the first time in many years. You have two dynamic players. Now, Doc said that they said to Joe, we need you to work on that 12-foot elbow jump shot. Well, guess what? He's close. I'm going to say he's mastered it. That's a layup. So when that ball went off last night, I said to my wife, I said, babe, that's good. That's good. Boom. Because that's what he does. And because of James, and they made the point when James inbounded the ball, James was supposed to go up top. But James was like, no, he could take these dudes and took everybody downhill with them to leave that open space. And Mark Jackson touched upon it. Joel Embiid's IQ is amazing. It's amazing. Okay, he had 4 turnovers. But as D. Lynam pointed out, most guys that touch the ball, your Harden's low, the Currys, those guys averaging 3 turnovers a game. But nonetheless, what you're watching and to say that they have the pieces right here that because now Doc's intertwining. All Doc has to do moving forward is continue to do what he's doing now. Yo, this lineup, I'm gonna put this against that. I'm gonna put this against that, and not be hampered or labeled playoffs. I can only play 8 guys. Nah, man. There's some nights you may have to go with a different rotation. You know, i.e., your starters, your Maxis. Yes, Maxis in the starting lineup. But aside from that, you may have to switch it up, and you have the luxury with the Meltons, with the House Juniors now, with the McDaniels that you're talking about. And you guys, I don't know if you realize it, we're rebounding a lot better because of a McDaniels. They're getting to those boards because of Paul Reed. So I'm enjoying the ride, man. That's all I can tell you. No, PJ Tucker, I'm cool with starting, but allowing those young guys to get a little bit more minutes in this space.
Before we go any further, today's show is also sponsored by Sherry'sTickets.com. Save 10% by using the promo code EOP10. Family owned and operated since 1946. Great prices and no hidden fees for sports, concerts, and theater. Visit www.sherry'stickets.com and tell them that the boys over at Pattison Avenue and EOP sent you.
And the best place to use that promo code and go to Sherry's Tickets is for the upcoming Sixers playoff games.
Oh, yeah.
That would be an ideal.
Good eye by you, brother.
A nice little gift for the loved one in your life. Or
Definitely.
Take your kids to a nice outing because there are probably going to be some day games.
We got a lot of chicken last night, too.
Yeah, we did.
Working it for chicken.
Yeah, we did.
Well, I mean, here's where I kind of lead with PJ and to kind of talk about like what you were saying, Dame, which is it's interesting to me because there was something I saw last night that you don't normally. I mean, even Allah said, I haven't seen that in years. They are trying. I think Doc is listening more to his assistant coaches.
I agree, Joe. I agree. Yes, I said that a while ago. Yes.
So,
yes,
and it stood out to me that he did because Dave Yeager, who's what considered our defensive coordinator on our coaching staff, had put in a formation early on in the game. It was the UCLA 4. And basically the UCLA 4 is a guard. It basically puts the center down at the bottom of the key, where near the basket, and it puts the 4 other players towards the foul line, and spreads them all out. Now, what happened was the Sixers implemented that, and the Blazers didn't even know what had hit them. Now, was that something that was like, hey, we're going to do this for no apparent reason? No, I think they're testing things out to just say, okay, does this work or doesn't it work? Like, does it surprise the team? Like, everyone doesn't realize that if you do everything that everyone else does, you become predictable in the way that you play, the way that you set up your scheme. The way that I would agree with the PJ Tucker and the rotations, So you have Maxey in the starting lineup, but we already know this story is that Maxey said, "I'm willing to do whatever the team needs me to do."
Right.
And so he was out of the starting lineup for Melton. Melton was the hot hand. Then Maxey got put back in the starting lineup. And now we can alternate that. So that is an asset. With Jalen McDaniels, he's come out and he's proven if you need to give PJ Tucker or Tobias a blow on the starting rotation,
I like that.
I'm here.
I like
Paul
that.
Reed is starving for minutes. He's basically saying, look, I don't care if you put a chicken bone on the damn court. I'm going on the court. I want to be there.
Right.
And
right.
so
right.
these are difference makers. Now, another player that's part of that rotation that I think is a fire starter when it comes down to things is George Niang.
Yeah.
This is a guy, and I still haven't looked up the actual stats because it's like, no, that just can't be right. I heard that he is one of the top 10 in 3-point percentages in the league. Yeah. And I go, what? Well, okay, that guy's coming off the bench. And he's like, yeah, exactly. And then Daniel House, and this is proof to me that the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe not just Joel Embiid, but the Philadelphia 76ers are Pattison Ave Phanatics fans. Because I completely lambasted Daniel House Jr. a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And Daniel House Jr. came out and was like, no, I'm still here. I'm still here, sir. I'm still here. And then every time Dame has like a prediction about Joel Embiid, 40-point game, sure enough, Joel's like, okay, Dame, I'll do it. and it's like, I'm like, all right, Sixers are Pattison Ave Phanatics fans. I'm like, okay, cool.
That's awesome. Because
as soon as I sit there and trash Joel and question his MVP status, he's like, I'll show that redhead. I'll show that redhead. Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about, the Mr. Skip Bayless.
Yeah.
But you know, that is the difference maker. And I want to get your takes on what you think this team will look like in the next 16 games, with 10 being on the road and 19-12 being their road record so far. Dame, where do you see this team? How do you see this rest of this schedule helping this team or hindering this team leading into the playoffs?
Man, great question, Joe. Great setup. First of all, let me get to House Jr. I'm a fan, and I noticed when he was shooting his 3-pointer, he would arch his back. And I kept saying, if someone can tell him because his form and everything is there, just to remain straight, keep it aligned, he'll hit the better three. He's starting to do that. So what they're doing with the House Juniors, the McDaniels is going to get a lot more time. And Yang, they're setting these guys up for their roles in the playoffs. Going back to what you just said, something Doc is listening to his coaches, right? He's listening to the Sam Cassells, the Burks and those guys saying, listen, you got to get these guys in there because come playoff time, we know Joe, Harden, Maxey, and even Tobias and is going to get the bulk of the minutes because they have to, but we also know they need a breather. And so when they get the breather, the Paul Reeds, dude, just go and grab your boards. Go and get defend without fouling. So I think they're going to, along the way, you'll see that continue to evolve for the better. So as we go into the playoffs, we're able to match up whatever lineup Boston wants to give us, whatever lineup Milwaukee, Miami, whoever it may be, so that we can go in this thing, man, ready, cocked, and loaded to do damage. So I like us in these next games. We're proving that we can win on the road. I mean, Joe, they went 4-1 on a difficult road trip. And think about this, James. So they beat Miami, right? The next night they go to Dallas. They get smoked. But they didn't get smoked. They were down by 20-21. They got the game down to 4. Right. And I'll say this, that I thought a lot of that was the body. You're tired. You checked in 2 a.m, different time zone. They come back and they beat Milwaukee, and then they go on and finish that road trip up 4-1. and then they come home and win another one.
Mhm.
So no, we don't want them to Joe. What I need to not see is keep digging these holes. I don't want. It's fun here and there, but I don't like to see you keep climbing out of holes. So like tomorrow night against the Wizards, handle your business.
Yeah,
Handle your
definitely.
business. Start going in there, and I know teams make runs. I get all that, but stop digging yourself into a hole. That would be that's what I want to see. Stop digging yourself into a hole. I know you can come out of it, but I want to see you take command early on and sustain the lead if you can.
James?
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing I can take out of it too, the next couple few games, I just don't want to have another these like sweat games going into the postseason. I mean, those games are a little bit hard for me to handle because it's like
your nerves.
It's just like, yeah, dude, it's like fucking. It really is. It's like it really is nervous. It's
James
like
is like, I'm 28 years young. I don't need a blood pressure problem.
Trust me, I got anxiety. That's too much as everybody is. No, but but they've been playing really good. I mean, that Milwaukee game a couple nights ago, last Saturday, that was a fun game to watch towards the end. Mm-hmm. It was just like when they were down, I was like saying, okay, that's we can probably just ship up and go back home, I guess. And then Joel Embiid hits that shot, thinking, you know what? I think this team might. I think, like I said, I think this team might be on to something.
James, let me just talk about that game real quick.
Sure.
So if you guys recall, right, Lopez is good. He's a good player. I'm not knocking him. All right, and I've watched him since he was with the Nets. And the stuff that he's doing now, he wasn't doing with the Nets. He was just low post. He's hitting the three and going inside. But do you realize, this is what I'm trying to tell, the Sixers are like, so when I say they're tough, it's almost like a boxing match. Right. Lopez didn't have any energy for Joe in the fourth quarter, y'all.
Nope.
Joe wore him out.
They wore both of them. We wore Middleton and Antetokounmpo out.
Yes. And so what we're seeing is like it's like a boxing match, and Doc's throwing different lineups. Okay. And if you recall, even last night, that lineup brought them back in the first half, but Portland went up again and we wound up winning. But yeah, man, it's just amazing to see that. But yeah, I think that with that, I lost my train of thought, but basically to pick it back off what James said, it's just different to see. No, I don't want the stressors either. I'm
with you, man.
Just to stay healthy. I want us to go in healthy, Joe. That was the other thing.
Well,
gotta go into the playoffs healthy.
That's healthy. Something else Joel, really hammered home during that post-game interview where he mentioned Dominic, because he knows he has to go in and he knows his team has to go in healthy. But they don't want to take their foot off the gas, and that's a balancing act, if there ever was one. But I want to go back to what you guys were talking about, sweats and Dame more especially. I want to go back to that Dallas game that you mentioned a couple weeks ago. TK had asked me, what did the Memphis game say to me when we came back and beat Memphis? And I said, it shows me that this team is willing to fight. They aren't willing to give any quarter for anything. And they were down significant to Dallas. And Dallas is a good team. And, I agree with you, Dame, that sometimes being in that hole, you kind of put yourself behind the eight ball. And it's not always easy to get up off the mat. However, and like you also mentioned, the idea that this is a league of runs. Now, this is where I completely am on board with Damon when it comes down to boxing match. When you compare the Sixers game plan to a boxing match, I go back to the New York game. I go back to there's a couple different games, maybe even the Memphis game, where they have to, a coach has to have 3 different players ready to go up against Joel Embiid. 3 different players.
Wow.
Not 1, not 2, 3. I'm like, hold up. I'm like, you can't contain this guy with just one person because he will beat you down.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And this is the thing that kind of gets me amped up for the playoffs. This is what people don't understand. If this team is deep, if Doc Rivers has the ammunition, the health of his players, the ammunition, and the rotation to wear down any team in a 7-game series, what do you think that does to the other team? It's the rope-a-dope. He's literally saying, you might get us the first game. You might get us the second game. But if we take one of those first 2 games and that goes to 6 or 7, we have you right where we want you. And that is the rope-a-dope.
Yeah. And that's what I thought about too. I like that, the rope-a-dope. Yeah, I look at it like that.
Yeah, I think Steven, the one that comments our show, just brought it up earlier. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah. I couldn't get the word out myself, but when Joe said it, yeah, it's a rope-a-dope.
Yeah, so it's a matter of this is a team that when they go into the playoff, when they go into whatever 7-game series, is there enough firepower on that opposing team, those 2 or 3? Because we talk about shorter benches in the playoffs for every team. So does a coach have 2 or 3 viable players off that bench? Look, I don't care. Starting centers in this league can't handle Joel Embiid. Do I think a backup center is going to handle Joel Embiid? No. No. Unless he's holding them or tackling them. No. Like that is the difference. And I think something else has been unleashed in Joel Embiid. And it's something that people have said he doesn't have. And it's proven these last couple months that he does. Killer instinct. He's going to cut you by the throat. He's going to cut you by the throat, and he's going to enjoy it because he's done playing Mr. Nice Guy. He's done sitting here trying to kowtow to everybody else, all the national pundits, all the, Adam Silva, anybody else. No, he's like, I'm done with that. Now I want what I want, and instead of asking for it, I'm just gonna go take it. And I agree. I completely 100% agree. Go take it, big man, because no one's gonna stop you. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal's speechless. When you leave Shaquille O'Neal speechless because the man called Joel Embiid early in his career soft. And sorry, Shaq, but he's surpassed you.
As my friend said, you need another adjective to describe him. Joe, let me pick off what you said. Killer. Against Minnesota in 3 quarters, he gave you, that's when he hit the 4 threes. And he normally only takes about 2 threes a game, but he was just hot that night under the 3-point line. And oh, by the way, he decided I'm going to go inside. Y'all want me in the post? He gave you the whole shebang of his arsenal that game in 3 quarters. Check this out, Joe, James. I said this to my wife. Joe just hit it. Embiid's a killer. I'm sure you guys would agree with me. Harden's a killer. And guess who else is a killer with that smile? Young boy Maxey. Fellas, we have 3 killers on our team. 3 of them. 3. Maxey's a killer. He's different kind of. He's a smiler, but he's gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. We got 3 of them. 3.
Well,
and a bulldog and PJ Tucker.
And I say and I add to that because I say what Embiid said to Maxey, and then Harden and Embiid are treating Maxey like a little brother, which I love. Yeah. Like they literally said to Maxey, James, we got a little bit of feedback.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But he basically said to Maxey, he's like, listen, you have to be more aggressive. And,
otherwise, we won't win.
Right. That's what he basically said.
And he's
so
right.
Maxey said, listen, I need that sometimes. I need my big brothers to kick me in the butt sometimes. And look at where his game took off to. Once he started to be aggressive, he's like, I'm pretty sure Embiid said, why do you care? Like, just go. As long as we care about you and love you, just go. Anybody got a problem with you, they got to deal with your big brothers. Don't worry about that. You just go do you. Because we don't need you going half stride. We need you going full stride. Because that's the only way we get a championship is if you go full bore. Maxey's
And how
like,
about his defense last night? How about Maxey's
I
defense
thought he wasn't
last
good
night?
at defense. Everyone's sitting here telling me he's a defensive liability.
You know what it was? He's still growing,
Yeah.
but I will say this about him, Joe. It was not for a lack of effort. You could see him trying at it. I've seen guys go, yeah, that ain't my thing. No, he had to figure, and he's still figuring out. But last night in that tip ball, and then I knew clearly we were going to win that challenge because it came off of kid Anthony's hands or whatever. And how amazing and mature of this young guy to receive what these greats are saying to him and embrace it and saying, okay, yeah, I belong. Let me do my thing. And they're right. They're right. So yeah, we need him in that starting lineup, man. We got 3 killers, man.
Listen,
3 killers, man.
And I've said this before, and I'll say this again in closing for the Sixers. For every Sixer fan out there that is like, we have a window for Joel Embiid. No, we don't. We have a window for Therese Maxey, because this kid is the future. He's the present. And here's the thing. This is Joe's team. But Joe's going to pass the baton to Tyrese. That's going to happen. So you want that kid to be a sponge for everything that him and Embiid and Harden are teaching him, and how they're implementing this stuff. Because my feeling is this kid, and I say this, and people are going to jump all over me, will exceed what Allen Iverson was to this team.
Ooh.
And I'm going to let that sit there for a bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to move on to your Philadelphia Phillies.
Ooh.
The Bomb Squad, the Broad Street Bombers.
Yeah.
They ain't on Broad Street yet, but they hitting some balls over into the highway. I mean, good grief.
He's on fire today, James. He's on fire today, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, he is.
He's so fired.
Listen, I understand. Like, I hope that State Farm insures that stadium down there, because balls are hitting that highway, and I'm sure there have been near misses to some cars. It's the old adage, like, when I used to play baseball, and I didn't play baseball very often, but when I played baseball when I was a kid, if we broke a window, if you hit a ball and you heard a window break, you ran.
Oh yeah,
you ran.
That was automatic.
Right. It was like you heard the crash, you ran, you scattered.
Yeah. Well, you did watch. Hey Joe, you did watch for a second. Oh
right.
snap!
Like, where did
Mrs. Wilson's window out.
Like you were like, what window? Oh, that's old woman Marcy's. Okay, we gotta go. We gotta go. But this team is so special. And I was listening to Marks and Reese yesterday, and Rob Thompson was on, and he confirmed a couple things. Number one, he confirmed that Turner and Schwarber are 1 and 2 in the lineup.
Okay.
And then they'll figure out everything else out after, and that's fine. We kind of anticipated that. They confirmed that it's a mild strain with Andrew Painter and his elbow. So I want to kind of go into things with you guys. James, I'll start with you. What has been your biggest takeaway from spring training so far?
I think it's just a hitting in general. I think the last couple of years we haven't been able to say hitting season, so I think it's probably coming in full burst again this year, and not even like halfway through not even the first games yet. And like I can just tell you right now, with yesterday and the last couple games that they've shown, it's just been. I think the one thing I take out of it too is that like the pitch clock in baseball. I think it's probably the best thing that happened to the game, to tell you honestly, because like I watched probably maybe a couple of few innings, like probably other teams other than the Phillies, and just how they're like controlling the clock. It's like if the game's over at 2 hours and 30 minutes or close to that, I'm good with that. I would rather have that game. And the other thing I'll take out of it too is that like I'd rather have games go quickly. Would rather have games go within the 2 hour limit than wait like 4 hours
Mhm.
for somebody to get into the box. Honestly.
Rob Thompson brought that up too, and I'll touch on that in a minute. Dame, what's been your biggest takeaways from spring training so far?
Yeah, great setup, James. I agree with James, and so I'm watching the highlights of Brad Hall yesterday, by the way, who hit a homer off a lefty, which was a good sight to see, right? Because we were told he couldn't hit off lefties, but he hit a bang off the lefty, and so one thing I love about baseball, and I tell people this, for people who say, "Oh, it's boring and slow," I said, "No, I said you got to understand the science between the pitcher and the batter," and
Right.
But I think that what began to happen over the years, and is that some of the antics, if you will, outside the batter's box, took a little too long, and then the pitcher, with the throwing the first base, so that adds up over a period of time with those innings. I still think the intensity's there, but now it's like we can move it along a little bit faster. And sports is usually football, basketball, hockey, within that two and a half hour to 3. But baseball was hitting 3.5 hours, Joe.
Yeah,
it was like there was a football game, and then the next thing you know, the football game ended, and the baseball game is still going on. Yeah,
and so
exactly.
I think I'm glad they looked at that. Like anything, something's new, people are going to be like, but by July, everyone's going to be like, oh, this is great. It's nice. So no, I like that. As far as the Phillies specifically, I will say this: I do like the fact that not only did they go to the World Series last year, and that Rob Thompson's back, he can start a fresh season with this system, kind of like with Harden with the Sixers, right? You get the whole fresh beginning of the season. So, yeah, man, and I like the fact that Turner is going to lead off and Schwarber. It's not going to affect Schwarber that much. It's actually going to open things up for him because he's going to see pitches. He's going to have to see them. And I know I don't want to jump the gun, Joe, but yeah, he's talking before All-Star break, and I won't say the name. I'll let you say it. But go ahead.
So we're going to touch into that. Because he also talked to Marks and Reese, and there was a couple other things that he mentioned that I was kind of stood out to me. But I'm going to touch what Rob Thompson had kind of said about the pitch clock, and some that is going to change. You guys know I don't like all the rule changes that have happened with MLB. The zombie runner, the throw over, all of that. Like some of that is just a little.
I don't like the zombie runner either. I don't like that.
I'm getting used to it. I get accustomed to it.
It's too peewee for me because I can devalue it. But what I could say, and this is where I'll agree with you guys, the pitch clock is the best thing that's happened to baseball in a long, long time. Definitely. Because I feel like regardless of what other rules they may walk back, meaning they could walk back the zombie runner, they could walk back the throw over rule, they could walk back the size of the bases and stuff like that. They could walk back a lot of rules. I think that they know they're going to have a higher viewership, which is going to mean more to baseball than it did anything else. That they're going to have a higher viewership, but externally from the viewership, there's going to be a player satisfying factor to this.
Right.
Rob Thompson said that all of his players that he has talked to in spring training are still trying to get adjusted to the speed, the new pace, but they love not having a 4-hour game. He's like, I'm sure all my players are going to love being able to get out of the stadium and go home and leave and go home by 9:30 instead of 11:30.
Exactly.
And it hits a nail on the head for many different reasons. Think about how much fresher a person can be if they get home by 10 versus getting home by midnight. They can get a better night's sleep. They can spend more time with their family. They can have more downtime. It doesn't seem
you can go out to the bar and you want to come home late either.
Right. You can go and have a beer. You can sit there and say, I want to see the West Coast games.
Right.
And not have to worry about going to bed at 3 a.m.
The one thing I liked about it too is that it helps out the brand for baseball, and also helps out the sport of any sport in particular too. Because April come around, I mean, usually in April, I'm really locked into the hockey NHL playoffs.
Yeah.
So the Phillies game ends at 9:30. You could probably watch like San Jose take on Vegas,
Yeah.
and it's all over by 12
Or the
o'clock.
Kraken. Or the
Or the
Kraken.
Kraken. There you go. There you go.
So the one thing that also, kind of was key to what Rob Thompson said is that his managerial strategy is going to have to change. Frank has been known to say, especially when we had Joe Girardi, that his head was in the book. Like when he managed, his head was in the book. Well,
Yeah.
You're no longer Gone with the Dodo Bird is going to be the managers that are going to sit back and just watch the game go by. You're going to see more attentive, more active managers in that dugout because decisions are going to have to be made very quickly.
Sure.
There's going to have to be a lot more kind of playing ahead of the game than there was before. Because before you didn't have to worry about things moving so quickly. You could be like, hey, let me get a cup of coffee before I make this decision. No, you can't do that anymore. It's like he said, even in the interview, he's going to have to think of moves 2 or 3 pitches in advance. And think about that. Think about how that's going to change the way managers manage. And think about how that's going to change some of the strategy of some of the game. So I feel like the pitch clock has definitely helped the game, and I think it's definitely going to help the brand. I agree with Rob because with any change, it's going to take some growing pains. There's going to be growing pains for these players to get adjusted. They're not going to like some of the things because it's going to take them out of the routine. To go into what Dame's saying, I've heard rumors that the rehabilitation for Mr. MV3, Bryce Harper, is going very, very well. And maybe even more well than he anticipated. I've heard early June. And he's already taking batting practice. He's already throwing the ball. This is now. Listen,
James and I both said at the same time. That's what I'm laughing.
This is my perspective. I'm not rushing him. No one is rushing him.
Right.
He can take his time because when he comes back into this lineup, the league isn't ready. The league is not going to be ready for what happens next. And I agree with Ricky Patalico that this team is going to break offensive records this coming season. It's just going to happen. For home runs, for RBIs, I predict with Turner leading off and Schwarber batting second, Schwarber will have 125 RBIs this season. I tell you that now.
So a couple things. When I'm kind of with you, Joe. I don't want to rush out. I'm even okay with him coming back, even if he's exceeding his rehab, right? The expectation that they place or timelines, if you will. I'm okay with after the All-Star break because, and I wonder, this is more of a question to you, Joe. He's not just coming back to be a DH this time. We want him in the outfield. So, which prevented him, that's obviously we know the reason why he had the surgery, prevented him from playing the outfield. So I want to make sure that all of that, as well as his conditioning, is up to par before you bring him. And I don't know if they'll do a thing where they'll have him come back if he's gonna hit and then work him back into the field. So how do you expect them to approach that, if any?
So Rob Thompson touched on something, and it's so interesting, and Bryce even touched on it a little too. So he got done the surgery, and then they did the rehabilitation that they normally do. And Bryce says to his trainer, I want to step it up to 2 times a day.
Right.
And his trainer's like, okay, hang on. Like, you just went through major surgery. You need to calm down. Rob Thompson was like, look, we're not pushing for you to come back that soon. It's the long lens of things. And Bryce said, I understand that, but I have to contribute to my team. It wasn't about him as much as he wanted to make sure that his team would not fail because of his timetable. And so this is a guy who, this is what Dame kind of touched on earlier when we talked about the Flyers. I think that this city is very special at the era that we're at right now. You have some guys in this city that are not only worth the price of admission to go watch, but that are worth listening to because of what comes out of their mouth, what you like that comes out of their mouth. Bryce Harper, Jalen Hurts, Joel Embiid. These guys say all the right things, not because it's a PR thing, because they believe it. And that's different. This is a town that could smell out BS from a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And this is the difference maker with Bryce Harper. When Bryce is sitting here saying that he's working his ass off to get back, I believe him.
Right.
I'm with you, Dame. I just don't want the guy to overdo it because if I get Bryce Harper at just a DH, I'm happy. If I get Bryce Harper as an outfielder and a batter, I'm ecstatic.
That's what I want. Yeah.
And that's where I think everyone is, but it's really going to be up to it's not going to be up to Bryce, because if it were up to Bryce, he trained 18 hours a day to get that thing back to right.
Mm-hmm.
But your body has to heal, and I'm glad we're talking about body and healing, because I want to talk about Andrew Painter. And the report came out Friday that he does not need Tommy John surgery, and it's a mild strain and everything else. And I was talking to James before we came on. I've dealt with surgeries at a young age, and I know a lot about having surgeries at a young age can kind of start a slippery slope with how your body breaks down. And I have heard so many reports from, I would say, probably 4 or 5 years ago. So I remember bringing this up a long time ago to you, James, about how minor league managers, minor league coaches, minor league scouts, how they all have been suggesting to these power pitchers. Now, let's be clear. In MLB nowadays, there's 90% of pitchers that come out of the minor leagues are power pitchers. That's just the fact about it. When you're a power pitcher, your elbow goes through a lot of stress, which then leads to eventually Tommy John surgery anyhow. A lot of these, minor league guys were telling these players, these pitchers, to go get the Tommy John surgery first. Don't even wait till you pull your elbow out. Go get the surgery first. Well, I talked to a medical professional about a week or so ago, and this was prior to Andrew Painter getting hurt. And he said, I have 2 prosthetic corneas. And the prosthetic corneas in my eye are made of different layers, but one of the layers is a titanium plate. Well, I've had surgery since I was 13. I've had about almost 20 surgeries on my eyes. So the scar tissue, the body that breaks down healing, builds up scar tissue. Well, that scar tissue in my left eye is pushing out the titanium plate, which is kind of natural, it's scary, but it's kind of natural. With this regard to these young players like an Andrew Painter at 19 going through a surgery, voluntary surgery. First, medical professionals were telling me that no right-minded surgeon would ever do a surgery, internal surgery, when there's not an injury, when there's not an emergent situation to do it. There's not a provocal reason to do it. So here's my thing. All these minor league players that are going to possibly have elbow injuries, mild or severe, to a guy like Andrew Painter, I would hold off on any kind of surgery. And I know people are so quick to pull the trigger on surgery, but you don't know how your body breaks down. if he's getting surgery at 19, what kind? And he has 3 or 4 or 5 more surgeries on that body part or other body parts in the course of 6 years. What is that young guy at 28, 29 going to look like? It's not. He's not going to have a good career. He's going to shorten his career. So the question I have for both you guys, and I'll start with James, but what's your takeaway with the idea of these young players possibly having to deal with some severe type of surgery like Tommy John so early?
Yeah, it is interesting. Like the first person I think of is Steven Strasburg. I think he was one guy that was supposed to be an upcoming star in the league, and literally the same year he came out, 2 months later he blew out his arm, and after that he basically got to Tommy John. He was out for probably the most of the 2011 season, I think, if he didn't play at all in 2011. But he continued to get surgery on that same kind of forearm, and it caused a little bit of damage to it. So that's the one thing I take out of it too. But as a young pitcher, like that is more of a thrower than a pitcher. You kind of worry about that because it's like especially who throws out his guts out, like it throws like a 99 to 100 at the gun, at the radar gun, and it's not good to be throwing that hard at that young age because it could cause a little bit of concerning part. But I guess it's the generation we live in nowadays. It's that there's not more pitchers out there. There's more actual throwers out there, like Dan Plesac said a few years ago. Sorry,
Dame.
Yeah. First of all, I haven't had surgery twice, ACL and hernia, whatever. I don't. If you can avoid having surgery, avoid it. And I don't understand. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor. Maybe play one on TV one day. I don't know. But it's not logical to me to just go cut on somebody, because then you're like now you're creating an injury that's not there, and everyone's body is different, right? That's what people have to understand. Everyone's body is different and it heals differently, the whole shebang. What concerned me was a couple of things because it was
Thanks,
like,
Steve.
this happened over a week ago, and we're just getting information. And I remember him pitching, and I think he might have pitched 2 innings or something like that. I can't remember. And next thing you know, the next day there was a soreness. They got to look at him, blah, blah, blah. And Joe, I think it may be a little, I'm not going to say it's going to be a little bit more. I'm not going to go down that lane. I think that they're going to watch it. I don't expect them to be back soon.
Well, he's been on a 4-week, I should say, 4-week rehab.
So here's what concerns me about that. And I don't know, it's just sports, whatever. He's 19. Do they now guard him with kid gloves?
Right.
And that's the part, because I'm not looking for him. I thought he was going to be in a rotation at this point. I put that out of my head because of this situation. The other thing that people have to understand is I didn't stop growing until I was 21. I think I went to my doctor. I do remember I had to get a physical, and he's like, "Oh, you go another half inch taller," And this kid's body's probably still developing. So, and listen, hey, I'm a fan. I'm a baseball, Phillies pitcher. I want to see him, but to the detriment of his health. Because you're talking what's the number, Joe? So in minor leagues, let's say he goes from, I don't know, he's throwing 75. I'm just throwing out a number. I don't know the numbers. Pitches a game. Now he's going up to 85. Does that affect that? Like, how does all of that come into play?
It kind of all depends on how, it's kind of like you said, it all really depends on how the body reacts.
Okay.
I mean, here's the thing to kind of understand. So with my surgeries, and some of the reasons for my surgeries, it had to do with my eye disease. But so that's how my body reacts. But even after a surgeon operates on me, all my doctors are like, okay, as much that we understand about medical science, we can read every book that there is to know about, cataract surgery. We can read every book, but your body chemistry could react so different than what's in the books. And we have to figure out, as medical professionals, as people who want to take care of you, how then to proceed without doing more harm than good. And that's where a lot of the doctors I've talked to, at least, have basically said doing a voluntary surgery like that would do more harm than
I
good,
agree.
because it would cause, maybe it would seem like in the short term it would do less harm, but in the long term it would do more harm, because one surgery, it's kind of like a snowball effect. And that's one of the reasons why we try not, I mean, my eye doctors always are trying to make my vision, or always have tried to make my vision better. And even now, with medical science and everything else, even though I only have light perception in my right eye, there's still medical science out there that's still trying to advance, surgery and whatnot, to be able to restore vision in people who've lost vision. Now, understand something. None of my doctors are going to sit there and go, okay, this cool new toy came out that can get people to see. We're going to put it in. We're going to do a surgery just to put it in your eye.
Right.
No, they're going to make sure that all the boxes have been checked. Andrew Painter is not going to go into surgery. These trainers should not put him into surgery if it's not an absolute necessity. And because if he's in one surgery at 19, 20, he could be in 2 more surgeries before he's 23, and then 3 more before he's 27.
30. Yeah.
Right. And then
Before he's 30,
what does that lead to? What does that end up his career?
Now you're no good. You're damaged goods.
Right.
You become damaged goods, and I'm sure his agent, whoever, his family's like, you don't want to put yourself in that position.
Right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people that love and care about him that don't want that to happen. And unfortunately, this is what I was saying to James. It's this balance between medicine and baseball analytics, because the baseball analytics would tell medicine, well, if they have the Tommy John surgery, it's less likely that he's going to need a second Tommy John surgery. So just get it out of the way. And it's like, no, you shouldn't do a surgery just to get it out of the way.
And to piggyback what you just said there about the setbacks and everything, that's what happened with, and Steve brought it up too, and I totally forgot about it, that Strasburg was on a pitch count in 2012 after he came back.
Yeah.
And then now that can probably be concerning for Painter's concern if he has another surgery, if he gets to Tommy John and he gets, God forbid, like swelling in his arm or like a setback or anything, then you might have to put him on a pitch count. Which
there's no guarantees. My doctors have always told me this. No matter what surgery I go into, no matter how good the surgeon, I have a great team at Will's Eye.
Yeah.
No matter what surgery I go into, no matter what doctors I have, there's no guarantees. It's always a gamble. It's always a risk-reward situation. Right. So with Andrew Painter, he has to ask himself, okay, can I do this naturally? Even if that mild tear gets exacerbated in the next 4 weeks and goes to, a strain goes from mild to major. Okay. Yeah. Then you have to figure out how to pace yourself.
And how you can nurse that.
Right. Naturally. With all the different types of therapies that are out there, the hyperbaric chambers and stuff like that, all the different medical sciences that are out there now, treatment naturally is just as effective as surgery, and maybe more so, because you don't have to worry about the scar tissue. Even now, with everything going on with my vision, there's a lot of people a lot of my surgeons that are sitting there saying, look, yes, is the mechanical side of things there a little further along than the natural? Yeah, it is. However, we would rather, if we can help it, go the natural route, because then there's a longevity to it. But where can people, James,
Mm-hmm.
go to see the Philadelphia Phillies? Like what if they want to go and travel to see the Philadelphia Phillies in Chicago or
Yeah,
New York? Where could they go?
some place called phillysportstrips.com. It's basically, I know this ad's a little bit old. I know it's an Eagles Philly sports trip, but there's a lot of trips to come to this year for the Phillies. I mean, they got a road trip coming up with the Yankees. There's a couple of them, I think, with the NFL draft. Union, point. I think Union game. I think someplace. I forget where it was. No, I'm sorry. It's Colorado trip to Colorado to see the Union and the Phillies around May. So if you want to check it out all at phillysportstrips.com, just check their website out at www.phillysportstrips.com and check them out today and tell them that the boys over at Pattison Ave and EOP sent you.
So, boys, we're going to transition into the Philadelphia Eagles, and there have been a lot of rumors. There have been a lot of news coming out. First off, Brandon Graham re-signed for 1 year,
Nice.
$6 million. It's a undisclosed amount, with the most amount that he could make is $6.5 million with incentives. So he definitely wants to stay. I think this is his last year, honestly, because he could break
Yeah.
the record for most games played in an Eagles uniform. And he's got a lot of pride. He wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he's a guy that he's never wanted to go anywhere else. But the big rumor that news that came out today, came out yesterday, was that Darius Slay and his agent have asked for and were granted permission to seek a trade. Damon, what do you think of this? Do you trade, keep Slay? What do you do?
I don't want him to get traded. From what I'm hearing, he wants more money. They want to keep him, which I believe they do. They want to restructure his contract. At the end of the day, I think they'll hopefully find a way to work it out. I think when they do the old secret trade, it's just a code for, let me see what you're worth to the open market, right? Let me see what your skill set is worth. I'm going to be patient. I know people are up in arms. Oh, we may lose them all. Howie's very smart, very aware of things. Does he always make the right moves? No, but more times than none, he makes the right ones, in regards to this situation when it comes to free agency. So some have even said, if you let Slay walk, sign Bradbury, then it's hard. It's so many things. And then you have to look at your draft picks. Here's what I want to see the Eagles do. I know you can't bring everybody back. If you can bring Slay back, bring him back. But go ahead and draft a cornerback. Go draft one of these studs that you can put in on day one. Let this guy go out and play. Then you'll have his rights for at least 3 years. That gives you more time, because Jalen's money will be on the books to figure out moving. Because all this, you grabbing guys for 2 years and they're kind of like, it just becomes old. I'm sorry. I want you to just draft a cornerback who can help you now, and then plug in somebody. That's where I'm at with it, Joe.
James, where are you at with the Darius Slay trade or keep?
I'm with Steven on this one. He said Slay had lost a step this year, and I agree 100% on that. I think the one thing that the Eagles should do is that if Slay wants to request a trade, I guess it's better for the team, because I think you could still bring in James Bradbury to come back on a 1 year on a contract, and same thing with CJ Gardner-Johnson as well. But if you can get like a stud from, like, I don't know, Georgia, mind you.
No, I don't know, Georgia.
Yeah, so I think
there's
some
name drop or anything.
Or the kid from Illinois that they were looking at.
Yeah, and Kelly Ringo is one of those guys.
Here we
one
go.
of those guys.
The name dropping of the dogs. I'm telling you, James, if you have invested interest in like money in the Georgia Bulldogs, I understand.
Yeah.
Correct, Mundo.
Listen. I am for trading Darius Slay.
Yeah.
I am for trading him, but I'm agreeing with Damon in this sense.
Hmm.
We need middle round picks, and
Right.
Darius Slay is not going to command a big price tag. Maybe money wise, but not a big price tag as far as trade. I would take a third or a fourth. I think you'd be lucky to get a third. I think
Mm.
you're more likely to get a fourth or a fifth. I love to get a fourth and a fifth. That would be ideal.
With that way,
But
you probably could do that.
right, and listen,
I think you can get that for him. I think you
I,
get a fourth and a
I,
fifth.
I think if I get a fourth and a fifth from for Darius Slay and take that money off the books, I take it and skip along, because I feel like, and I heard this on the radio the other day, and it's not a bad idea. And the last time the Eagles did, I think they did it twice, and both times it kind of worked out well for them. Drafting two good corners in the
Yeah,
same
man.
year.
Yeah, man.
When you looked at someone like a Bobby Taylor and an Irving Fryer, when you looked at like a Lito Shepherd and a Sheldon Brown, when you look at those
You mean
tandems,
Troy Vincent?
Troy Vincent.
sorry,
Mhm.
and when you look at like those guys, those tandems that were on this team for years together, that's what we need to start building. That's what we need to start to implement. Look, our offense is pretty much set, and I'll get to a little bit of one other thing that they could, that is a concern on the offense. But the idea that I could trade Darius Slay, free up that money, and Mike Laura was on here, and he opened my eyes to a player that I'm going to keep an eye on, and his name is Joey Porter Jr. And I remember Joey Porter's father
I do too.
and how beast of an athlete he
Stud.
was.
He was a stud.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I mean, I used to say that if I were running back and I looked over and saw Joey Porter on the other side of the line of scrimmage, I'd run the opposite way. And
Watch out.
I only say that about certain linebackers. Ray Lewis, Joey Porter, and Von Miller. Like those guys, I run the other way.
Yep.
I just don't even bother. But my feeling is, whether it's the first two, the top first round picks, whether you draft two corners there and get really big studs, whether you do that or you take out of the first three picks, the two first rounders and the second rounder, out of the first three picks, if you pick two corners there, I think you're set. Because I look at like what's happened in the league the last 2 or 3 years. Sauce Gardner. The Chiefs just won the Super Bowl with two rookie cornerbacks. The rookie cornerbacks are top line. That more teams are doing it. Throw them into the fire and see how they survive. Yeah, you might get a Ronald Darby from time to time. Yeah, you might get a Jalen Mills from time to time. But from time to time, you might also get a Lito Shepherd or a Sheldon Brown. You might get a Bobby Taylor, guys that were Pro Bowl caliber players. The next thing that I wanted to ask you guys, so Miles Sanders looks like he's on his way out. And there was a comment by Nick Sirianni this week that kind of has everybody scratching their heads. He says he wants a bell cow. If he doesn't re-sign Miles Sanders, he wants to go find a running back that is the bell cow for this run game. So I ask you guys two questions. Number one, is there such a thing? Is the bell cow still exist in the NFL?
Sure.
Bell cow running back still exist in the NFL? And number two, do you think that someone like Nick Sirianni of the Eagles could afford or get a bell cow running back in the NFL? In today's NFL. Dame, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the kid from Arkansas reminds me of one. I can't get his name out, but yeah, they're definitely out there. And I think the reason why he's saying it is because I'll stop speaking French. So there was a rumor that Derrick Henry might win out. Somebody was like, "Yo, could you imagine?" I'm just using him as an example. I don't see that happening. But if you had him back there now, those RPOs become even way more dangerous.
No
for the
offense, but
opposing
do you
team.
think Tennessee's doing any business with the Eagles at their last?
No, not at all. They disconnected our number. They blocked our number. They blocked Howie's number. So, but if you could get somebody to that magnitude, that helps the team. But let me go back. This is what gets me with people when they go, oh, I don't want to spend the number 10 pick for a corner. That's too high. When you're in need of something, it doesn't matter. That's like saying, oh, my car needs new brakes, but I don't want to get the brake pads. I need brakes.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I'm going to need the brake pads.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, like, I don't get that. If this player can help your defense and help your team, we're set on offense. I even hear people saying that they might go for a wide receiver. I'm cool with that, but not in the first round. Maybe that 4th or 5th round if we get those picks. Go get you 2 stud corners, number 10, or if you keep your 30th pick, or you want to move up or move down to the 2nd round, they're there as well. And then you can still get the other pieces you need. Just get you a corner.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Dave. I think the one thing I take out of it too, I think the maybe the day that the Eagles, like, if they do draft a running back, will be like 2nd or 3rd round. I think probably like McIntosh is another guy that I'm doing an article on, and I did so many this week. I got to keep track of how many Bulldogs I picked. But no, I think at first that the Eagles need to do is like build up the defense is the biggest top priority, and then after that, go and get yourself the running back that you need.
Hey, Philadelphia Eagles and Howie. Here's a little hiring tip. If you want to hire a pro scout that's going to just be strictly Georgia Bulldogs, James Scores is available.
James Scores is a guy.
Yeah, he's available.
Freddie Burns too. I can't.
Freddie too.
Freddie Burns and James Scores.
Yeah, Freddie Burns and James Scores are available, I'm sure.
There you go.
So the one thing that I will say is, as far as the running backs, so I'm in lockstep with corners, especially with what Dame's saying, and it surprises me that people say you don't get a corner in the first round. Okay, let me evaluate this. So Sauce Gardner, who went 4th overall, is now being considered the next Darrelle Revis. Oh, that was a miss. Okay,
yeah, right.
So that's not a smart move. Trent McDuffie did pretty well. Like all these guys, Asante Samuel Jr., okay.
Right. Which I wish we would have taken before.
Patrick Surtain, like all these guys, like it's like, okay.
Forgot about Surtain too.
Right. These guys weren't all first-round picks, but they were all talented, highly touted corners. So
and Joe, that helps your books because I don't have to worry about paying that position for the next 3 years.
I'll do you one better. If it's a first-round pick, you get the guy for 5 possible seasons.
Yep.
So why would you not try to have a pairing that long? You don't have to worry about doing anything for 5 seasons at that position. You don't look. I could care less if you do it 1 in the first round, 1 in the second round, and you get 5.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
That's fine.
Hell, I'll take 1 in the 3rd round if you get a 3rd round pick. Right. I don't know.
Well, my point is this: with regards to the running back and a bell cow, I did 2 articles one on Damian Pierce and one on Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco is the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs that just won the Super Bowl.
From Jersey.
And Damian Pierce was the starting running back for the Houston Texans, and he tore it up too. Damian Pierce was a 6th round pick. Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick, 21 spots prior to Brock Purdy. You understand something. It is not far-fetched for the Eagles to go get a running back in the later rounds that can still be a bell cow. It just means you have to do your homework on those guys that really exist. Look, they got a guy. It may have been a long way around, but both me and Al, I believe it was 2 years ago, or a year or so ago, were at South House yelling to draft Trey Sermon. And we wound up getting Trey Sermon anyhow. but it was the long way around. But do we think Trey Sermon's the bell cow? No, we do think he'll probably make the roster, but I just feel like that the bell cow doesn't even exist anymore in the NFL.
I mean, it just got to find it. It's just the overall running back is not going in the first overall pick or the second and third round. But you can get your guy in those fourth and fifth rounds. If the Eagles, and don't give me the best player on the board. I don't want to hear that. You have to go in specifically for a need. You're in need of a cornerback. Hopefully you can work out things with the C.J. Garner-Johnson. If you lose him, you get the supplemental pick. I want you put the guy on and keep him. Try to figure something out with that, and get you 2 stud corners, and then you can go ahead and build. Because here's the thing, Joe. I don't want them to give me the we had to draft another offensive lineman when you have guys in the trenches ready to go.
Yeah,
right?
I agree in most ways with that because of 2 things. Number one, the idea, I think CJ is going to get signed. I just think for Howie, he has to see how the Slay and Bradbury thing is going to shake out, because if he winds up losing both corners, he's definitely going to need a safety, and he's willing to pay out the nose to keep that guy in the building.
And the thing about it was he was converted because he was a corner first.
Yeah, but he likes playing safety now.
No, and keep him at safety. I'm cool with that. I'm not.
But one of the things that Howie also mentioned is that he's not a big fan of moving Maddox up, only because the way that Maddox plays and the injury he was coming back from, they want to make sure that he's here for the long haul. However, the one thing that I will say, there's, and we'll get going soon, but the one thing I heard is the rumors of the defensive back coach that left, Wilson. Yeah, and the guy that they're planning on possibly bringing in, and how that might rub Slay the wrong way, and that could be another reason why.
Yeah,
Slay
I saw that too. Patricia.
Matt Patricia. And here's my takeaway with Matt Patricia. As much as people think, no, don't bring him in, he's got Super Bowl championships under his belt. This guy is willing to be not a DC, because he was a DC. He's willing to be an underling under your new DC. I take it. He takes.
Yeah. The guy knows how to win, and he learns.
I'll take Mike Patton, actually.
What is that?
Mike Patton.
Okay.
The former Jets defensive coordinator.
I don't disagree with that, but I mean, you would put him as defensive backs coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, for sure.
I mean, listen, I think if you combine this guy, this new DC, with someone like Mike Patton from the Jets, who has also had success with the guy who I just mentioned with Sauce Gardner and all them.
Well, actually, this was during the Duel with Eva Sarah. I just remember the name from Hard
Knocks. Oh, well, that's even better. That's even better. I mean, he coached one of the better cornerbacks.
He coached Antonio Cromartie and Duel Rivas and so much. I think if I can know my history about it, I think
you're right. You're right. Yeah. Because the Rivas did finish up with the Jets. You're right.
Yeah.
So I mean,
before he went to Cleveland.
Yeah. So my perspective is this: corners have to be priority. Running back, Miles Sanders probably isn't going to be here next year, but I really do feel like there are possible. I don't think you have to reach so high in the draft to get a stud running back. Let's remember, 3rd round is when we got Brian Westbrook.
Yeah.
So we don't need to get a 1st rounder for that guy. I mean, we could get a 3rd rounder. Like I said, ideally, if we get like a mid-round pick or pick or 2 for Darius Slay, I think that'll help in the long run, because I really do feel like your mission has to change. The final question that I'll wrap things up with, I heard this all day yesterday, and it kind of irritated me. And I want to know if it's irritated you guys. I heard that the Eagles the way that the Eagles are game planning their offseason, this could be a step back year. I heard that phrase quite often yesterday on sports radio. I want to get your initial reactions of that phrasing. That next season is going to be a step back year for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Damon,
That's it. That's interesting.
I don't think Howie I don't know the man from a can of spray paint other than, from afar, obviously, but I don't see them approaching it like that. They've they got to the Super Bowl. I think I don't see him. If people are talking in terms of we're going to lose some of the key pieces that we had to help us achieve what we achieved last year, maybe in that regards. But as far as them intentionally going and say, well, we're going to take a step back here, I don't see him approaching it like that. Why would he? He's trying to win. You're trying to win with your young quarterback now. Because you don't know what can happen a year or two from now.
Mm-mm.
Like, why would you approach it like that? That doesn't make. I would need more more understanding, more breakdown of that. What do they mean by that comment? That doesn't move.
so what they mean is, okay, we have a Pro Bowl corner
Mhm.
in Bradbury and a Pro Bowl corner in Darius Slay.
Okay.
And with Darius Slay, we're willing to trade him so easily. And with Bradbury, we haven't like run to the door to save him from leaving,
Mhm.
but we haven't like opened the door for him.
Mhm.
So people's takeaway is we're going to take our losses because we're willing to look at the 3 or 4 year window versus the next year window.
But here's what I'll counter with that, Joe, and you just said it earlier. So if you go, let's say hypothetically, boom, Slay moves on, Bradbury moves on. Now you got to go with 2 stud corners, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You just lost to a team who had rookie corners.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you have to take it? Everything doesn't always have to be, because of this is going to happen, right? You go into it and you replenish those. If you replenish that, now if you say, okay, now is it hard? And we've known this to be true in football. Most times, losing teams, they don't get back to the Super Bowl, right? In most cases. So, but that doesn't mean we can't be there. I said this, and I'm going to stick with this with the Eagles. If nothing else, what I will say about this team, they will remind me of the Andy Reid regime, meaning I expect us to go back to at least the NFC Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
They can prepare for that.
James, what do you think? Step back year? Do you think that any of these comments, these hot takes, do you think any of them are valid?
It's too early to say. I think the one thing I take out of it is that if let's say, for example, they let, like you said, they let Slay and Bradbury walk out the door, then it's like now you got to start fresh again. Now you got to rebuild the quarterback, and God knows if C.J. Gardner Johnson's going to walk out too, and that's kind of a little bit of a worrisome too. But I'm not too worried about it. If either both or 3 of them walk, then it's going to be like, yeah, I think it's going to be like I said, a step back year.
So I'm that's gonna wrap it up for us. But I wanted to give some plugs and some shout outs first to James. Thank you for producing.
Excellent job.
And
Thank you, brother.
Excellent job.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I also wanted to let people know this tomorrow is Selection Sunday for March Madness.
Oh,
and
yes.
if you tune into my Twitter account at JoeWolf112680, I will be having tweets every hour, every day for different gear, opinions, takes, everything else. So please stay tuned to my Twitter at JoeWolf112680 for any gear, for any takes that I'm going to have during the games. It'll all be starting Thursday around noon. So just stay tuned to your Twitter and keep an eye out. Garner some new gear, garner some hot takes. I'm actually also on my Facebook group, Top Rope T-shirts and more. I'm actually doing a wrestling March Madness, WWE versus AEW. Battle
Nice.
to the the brawl for the battle of the brawls, I should say. So, go vote for that. I've put a couple up top seeds already. We have Roman Reigns versus I believe. Well, I'm sorry. There's different matchups like Chris Jericho versus
What's it, like a bracket?
yeah, it's a bracket, and you just vote.
Excellent. Sweet.
So go vote. But that's gonna do it for us. For my main man, James Scorza, Damon Salim, Tom Kelly, Frank Finnegan. For all us at Pattison Ave Phanatics, Edge of Philly Sports, I'm Joe Marks, and we are out.
Later.